getting started is tricky, and what makes it tricky? Do you have any idea? Yes? Sorry? The pickup note. The pickup note makes it tricky, but even before that is, when do I breathe? Do I breathe in, da 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 da, or do I breathe in, da 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 da? Right? So let me use a little short analogy. When I go on a trip, like when I knew I was coming here today, I live up in Delaware. So when I knew I was coming here today, last night I went to the gas station and I filled up my gas tank. Because I knew it was a 15-minute drive to come down and take it. So I fill up my tank way before I need that gas. The same thing needs to happen with your breath. You need to fill up sooner. My opinion, you need to breathe, da 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 da. Can we just try that? It might be a little bit different from what you're used to. But just take a nice long breath, da da. And all I want is the first two notes. Ready? Breathe. Do that again. And breathe. Again. Breathe. Hello. Thank you. A little bit late in the low breath. And breathe. You're going da da. I want you to go da da. All right? Ready? And in da da. In and in. All right. Very good. Let's do it and go on just a little bit. Is that? So when I drop my hand, you're breathing in. It's going to be da da. Is that? So that's a little bit different than what a lot of people teach. I just don't think we should wait until the last minute. Because when I go, that creates tension, and I don't want tension. I learned this sitting in the Madison Symphony Orchestra in Wisconsin. My trumpet teacher was the first trumpet, and I played second. And I noticed that when he had a rest, it didn't matter. If the music was this fast, he breathed for a full measure. It was amazing. He would go, done. He didn't wait, done. He didn't do that. He went, breathe in, play. And I learned that you could breathe in much slower and much more relaxed if you use that space. Okay? So that's the first thing I would suggest. The second thing, let me just ask you a question. If you were to describe, now think about this before you raise your hand and answer. If you were to describe what you do physically to create an accent, you have an accent printed on any of your pieces, not necessarily this march, but there are some accents in this march, right? And then there are some accents in Light Eternal as well. Think about, what do I do physically to create an accent as a wind player? How do I do that? And what type of sound do I want to hear when I am creating an accent? All right, let's hear from a woodwind player. What do you do to create an accent when you have one written on your page? Yes? One more time? You tongue it. Okay? How many agree with tongue? Okay? Thank you. Anybody have any disagreement on that? Yeah. How do you put more force into the beginning of the note? What do you do physically to create that? Ah! I heard the key word. Air. Here's what happens. I do a lot of judging, and young musicians think that accents are created with the tongue. They're really not. Accents are created with the air. If you create an accent with the tongue, you get an explosion of air, of articulation, I should say. And when you get that explosion of articulation, often, how does that affect the sound? It's blatty, I use the word brittle, and sometimes it's uncontrolled. So what you need to work on, I think, and I mentioned on a tape, I'll have some specific spots. Think about accents as coming from here, not from here. Okay? Because when you go tuck, 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 that might be the sound in a specific spot, but really the accents need to come from here. Think about any of you used in your textbooks highlighter, or you highlight on an assignment something? And that's what an accent is. You're simply highlighting that. Okay? So you highlight that from here. Think about your tummy. I had a colleague that used to say, no tummy, no tone. Right? So you have to be using that breath, and that's what creates the accent. If you start exploding the tongue, you get sounds that aren't quite as lovely. Now, last thing in the 2 minutes that I have, let's go to the Asian program scene, the middle section. Does that all make sense to you? Yeah. And it's all about the sound. You want your sound to always be controlled when you're accenting. Okay? If it sounds like your lips are coming out the end of the bell, that's not good. Okay? And it creates sounds that just aren't as attractive. I'm glad you gave me something to pick on you for today, because otherwise I don't know what I would have done. Okay. Can we go at measure 57? So measure 57, we have this lovely slow line that I think some of us felt like we were doing some things with in terms of musical line, and other of us felt like, oh, I'm not sure that I think the musical line is right. So let's just play the first 4 measures, please, of this, starting at 57. What I tell my students is you have to actually use little marks. So there are go-to notes, in other words, notes that are going to, and then there's an arrival note, and I mark the arrival note, and then there are come-from notes. And as long as you know where you're going, where you're arriving, and where you're coming from, the music has a nice sense of line. Okay? If you don't have that, it's like you're speaking in a monotone, and nobody wants to hear that, right? But you need to be thinking about that, and these things are not always marked in the music, right? They have to have a sense of line. Okay? Do you have questions for me? All right. You guys have been terrific. I really enjoyed your performance, top to bottom, and everything that I say on the tape is both complimentary as well as just trying to give you a couple of hints. So let's just quick review. Breathe early. You're going to have to practice that because that's a new concept for a lot of people. Breathe early. Accents happen with the air, not the tongue. Control your tone. Unmarked phrases, go ahead and make a line and do it together. Okay? Very good. Thank you all. Pleasure being with you today. You've contributed to a sense of normalcy for this old man. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So thank you for being here today, everyone. As you can see, our format is really designed to mimic the adjudicated event process we'd normally be going through for district or state band contest, but also let you observe how our students receive instruction from clinicians and what we strive to improve upon. So we're actually going to give you a glimpse into the next portion, which you don't usually get to see. Usually the band goes into a back room and does a sight reading. And I'm going to turn it over to our sight reading clinician, Mr. Jim Dowdy, who's going to give you a little bit more information. But we're going to get set up for sight reading, and we ask that you get to enjoy that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Benson. Let me get my notes out here, and I believe the folders are getting passed out. Welcome. Again, parents, this is going to be a unique opportunity for you. Over 100 years ago, when OMEA put together their model for adjudicated events, we wanted to really find a way to answer two questions. What do these students know? What can they do? Now, what we've just heard in the last 10 or 15 minutes is what they know and can do after a month, 2 months, however long of practicing. But now we're going to find out really what is substantively involved in the education process. They haven't been able to practice this. We're going to go through a process for you where you're going to actually see and observe the quality of the education that's going on here. So let's see, if all the folders are getting passed out. In the meantime, percussion, you're aware of what you're going to be expected to play. You've got someone covering bells, timpani, snare drum, bass drum, triangle, crash cymbals, suspended cymbal, wind chimes. In our various brass and woodwind sections, we have some divided parts. Some clarinets will be playing a first part, some on a second part. Trumpets on a first part or a second part. Everything else will be in unison. We have treble clef and bass clef, euphonium baritone parts. So everyone is set. I want you to take, let's see, the folder, okay, folders. So would the section leaders open and pass out a piece called Across the Sunlit Path? Students, as you get your music, look and make sure that you have that and then turn it over so you can't see it. But section leaders may go ahead and pass out their music now. I'm going to talk to your parents for a moment while you're getting this done. And Mr. Guerreri, you can signal me when everyone's got their music. And again, it's turned over, they're not studying it now. So yes, begin passing it out. So parents, what's going to happen here, once they have their music and we put them on the clock, there are going to be 2 4-minute education moments. The first 4-minute will be when the students will try and learn their music themselves, but at the same time, Mr. Guerreri is going to look at the music and decide, how can I teach them? The students will each have their own piece of music. In fact, would you raise your hand if you've ever played an instrument before? Okay, so we've got, looks like maybe 25 to 35%. So those of you who read music already, you understand what the process is. For those of you who don't, these students have learned a foreign language, and just like their brains began to develop when they were youngsters in your home, 2 or 3 years old, and beginning to learn to understand English and then to read English, well, their brain is going to operate the same way reading music. How are we doing on the music here? Is it all out? They're still getting that set up. So in any case, during this first 4 minutes, they're going to employ all of their reading skills to look through their music. You may see them moving fingers, moving slides, trying to air tap. They're trying to teach themselves how their music goes. But here's what Mr. Guerreri has to do. He has the answer sheet. He has all of their music. And so during the 4 minutes, the students will try and teach themselves their part. Mr. Guerreri has to look at all of their parts and determine, how do I teach them to perform this? Because even if we have 1 or 2 students that have perfect pitch, they still have no idea of how anything else goes. How are we doing? They've all got them? Okay. So what's going to happen is when I allow them, they're going to have 4 minutes to look. Students, use your time wisely. I've studied this. I mean, I know what's happening. I've got all these things marked on where it might go wrong. So I'm ready. But what you need to do is spend your 4 minutes teaching yourself. Because if you don't do that, when Mr. Guerreri gets his 4 minutes to teach you, he's going to be dead in the water. You better be prepared knowing how your part goes, because you don't want him to be teaching you how to play your part. He wants to be teaching you how to put this jigsaw puzzle together. I'm going to help you. I'm going to be counting down. I've got my stopwatch here. I'll let you know when you have 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, and 30 seconds. So that way you can time yourself, pace yourself, make sure you get it all done. I will do the same thing then for Mr. Guerreri during your 4 minutes of teaching. I'll let you know 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds. It's only during that time that he may speak to you or answer questions. If you have any questions during your 4 minute study, are you going to allow them to ask a section leader or something like that during their 4 minutes? Okay, so you may do that. But Mr. Guerreri can only answer questions from you during the second period. Finally, no one may play their instruments. I've already told your parents. They may see you moving fingers, moving slides, air tapping, all that kind of thing. The only instrument we are allowed to hear is in the first study section. That's the timpani, tuning the timpani. Do that quietly. All right? Flutes, as you're studying, if any of you are practicing moving fingers, keep your head away from the embouchure plate. You don't want any air coming out and accidentally playing an instrument. Okay, let's see. Yeah? Oh, one other thing. When he's teaching you, he can have you sing, he can have you try anything to learn the music other than play the instruments. Finally, I'm going to tell you, I expect to hear mistakes. I've been doing this for a while. I have never heard a perfect performance. But what I want you to do is I want you to stay in the music, stay with your director, and don't give up on him. Don't give up on yourselves. You are going to be fine. One of the great music teachers, band directors in Ohio was Mary Jane McKinley. Mary Jane used to tell her students, there's only one difference between a professional and an amateur. When the professional makes her mistakes, they're so beautiful nobody knows them. That's the whole key. You know what the worst thing that could happen today? That you're so afraid of making a mistake that you play in fear. I don't want you to do that. You played beautifully during your prepared section. And I know you are very capable. So, I want you to use your 4 minutes wisely, listen to your director, play as musically as possible. Help me answer those 2 questions. What do you know, and what can you do? At the end of the second period, I will give you a moment or two for like a tuning pitch, because they will not have played for about 15 minutes. Their instruments will have gotten cold. So, are we all ready to begin? Turn your music over. Three minutes. 2 minutes. One minute. Thirty seconds. Time.
All right, so first off, our E flat, correct? Okay, do we have any road map things? We do. It looks like I measure 63, 64, we have a D cell coding. Where do we go back to after? Where's the sign? Okay, measure 7. All right, here we go. Can we go to measure 63? Here's your tempo. Measure 63. We're going to do that. Get our eyes go back to measure 7. Here we go. Ready? Just air sizzle. 1, 2, ready, and 1. 3 and 1, 2 and 3 and 7 and 3, 4 and 1, 2 and 3, 4, 1, 2 and 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2 and 3, 4 and stop right there. Mark that stop there. What's that? Go right to the coda. Can you do the coda? Ready? Here we go. Right at the coda, you sizzle through that. 1, 2, 3, 4 at coda. 2 and ready and 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, stand up, 1, and 3, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, stop. Okay? So hopefully you got the road back there. All right? Can we go right pick up to, let's actually go to measure 37 and go to the slow section. Okay, do you see that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 37. Accents ready, and 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 1, 3, 4, Ramada. And keep going. And then like you on two, have 2 timpani. Here's the clarinets. Ready? Clarinets. 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3. You ready? Flute, alto saxophone, trumpet. 1, and oboe. 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, and clarinets, 2 and
30 seconds.
And then we go all the way to measure 36. If I said that, 36 minutes go in. Okay? So I'll help you out there. Here we go. Can we start the piece real quick? Ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, ready, and 1, and 3, 4, and 1. Get a nice crescendo, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Take crescendo. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, take crescendo. 7.
And time.
Okay?
I want to apologize, by the way. I promised him I was going to say 3 minutes, 2 minutes. I was so busy taking notes on your teaching, I suddenly went, wait a second. I'm out of practice, too. You may take a note for a pitch or...
Have concert tuba. Let's get that together. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, tuba. Everyone taking a concert. 2, ready, and go. Hum and 2, hum and go. Tubas, ready, and go. And 2, ready, and go. All right,
students enjoy the applause. You'll never hear applause in the sight reading room because no one comes in like that to listen to you. But first thing, my comments on your teacher's teaching for you, his preparation. He did everything he could do, and he went right to where the hard spots were. Notice right away he went into the roadmap. Again, parents, even if you've read music, you have no idea what they're seeing up here. In this case, they had a DS all coda, which for parents who don't know about music, imagine that old game Chutes and Ladders, and as you're going along, suddenly your ladder sends you up or the chute takes you down. We have that in music, where suddenly the students have to jump from one place to the other. Mr. Guerreri went right to that. He also went to the hardest spot in the music, that spot around 39, 40, that is a wicked transition. And so he explained to you what he was going to do to help you stay together. The way the music is written there, let me get to it let's see. Oh yes, it's written where you have a fermata with the wind instruments. Then during that fermata, in comes, looks like the suspended cymbal. Then he releases the brass and woodwinds. Actually, the suspended cymbal is to keep going. And then as the suspended cymbal is crescendoing, he has to bring in the clarinets. You talk about multitasking. He had a hard job, and he did everything he needed to do. So you should applaud him right now. In fact, parents, I'll tell you, can you imagine anywhere else in a curriculum where a teacher does no time to prepare, they get 4 minutes to study a lesson, teach the lesson, and then the students are evaluated? I can't imagine a math, social studies, or science teacher willing to do that. But we've been doing that in music for over 100 years. Okay, so let's talk about now how you did. I'm always listening. Music is divided into melody, counter melody, accompaniment, and I always want to hear the melody. Now, one of the disadvantages I had, normally in a sight reading room, your adjudicator would be right in the middle in front of you. I was over here, so like, for example, you've got a nice saxophone section. I can tell you're right here, and I kept hearing, while I couldn't always hear like the clarinets, which I will tell you, my bias, the clarinet in the band is like the violin in the orchestra. I want to hear plenty of clarinets, but it wasn't your fault, I would imagine, and our other two adjudicators did have your scores up there. They'll be able to tell you if they could hear the balance. I just couldn't really overhear. I thought you got off to a nice start. I liked your crescendo. Generally, my rule of thumb is when it comes to dynamic changes, they're gradual, they're sudden. Decrescendos, crescendos are gradual changes in dynamics. When I see crescendos, I tell my students I'd like you to delay the crescendo, take it a little slower, because usually there's other things going on that I want to hear. When you get a decrescendo, immediately start doing something. I thought your crescendo was nicely done. I thought the decrescendo, maybe you could have acted a little quicker on that. I wrote down saxophone for the very first time at number 7, and then I just quit writing because I knew I was going to hear it. I really liked the horn presence when you came in at measure 12 and in your counter melody at 15. Let's see, 19 and 20, there's a beautiful little call and response where we have eighth notes on beat 1 and beat 2, answering on beat 3 and beat 4. I would have liked to have heard more of the answer, but again, Mr. Guerreri, it could have been where I was standing. But I really want to hear that kind of thing. Measure 22. I did not hear the wind chimes going on beat 3 and beat 4, but then I wrote a plus because on the DS, you did it. That's another thing we look for in adjudication. Many times, something will happen a first time, the students might miss it, but it's going to happen later, and I want to see, are they learning on the fly? Whoever did that part in the percussion section should be complimented. They got that exactly right the second time. Let's see, at 29, or 28, I really like the horns there. I would like to hear a little more of the low part. You have descending eighth notes, beat 1 and beat 2, 1 and 2 and 3. I'd like to hear more of that. Measure 30 and 31, there's your first real transition. I thought the release was fine at 30, but the attack coming in at 31 needs to be precise. He gave it to you. You need to be watching him. You need to be aware of that kind of thing. We also ran into a little precision problem there, and I found you did that again on the DS. For some reason, you got to 30 when it says tempo. You're to return to the original tempo, but some of you wanted to go faster, and really it's not indicated in the music. We get to 39 and 40, again, that's that crucial time. I thought your immediately change of dynamics was spot on, and you need to follow your director as you go from 39 to 40, transition into 41. I would have liked to have heard more clarinet. You've got that melody, but again, you were over on that side of the band. We get to measure 49. That's a really crucial spot in the trombones. Mr. Guerreri even knew that, and he began the Mr. Ed foot tap on the podium to help you with the counting, because for parents, they had rest and 2 and 3. That's a very hard thing to negotiate on the fly. I would like to have heard more first trombone as the divisi part. I heard, well, actually, I think the trombone's in unison. I heard the baritone bassoon go E flat, D, E flat, stay on the E flat. I'd like to hear the trombones make that move up to the C. Let's see, measure 53. I thought your forte could have been a little more convincing. Measure 55, I was really interested in that flute oboe first clarinet part, that 1, and a 2 and 3. Make sure that part can be heard. At 57, we have that nice little divisi in the alto saxophones. In the trumpets, I heard the top part. I need to hear a little more of the bottom. Make sure at 61, I want to hear that 2 and 3, 4. Maybe get the whole note a little bit softer. Let's see. Then we did the DS back to 7. And I made a comment that for some reason in the accompaniment, someone didn't count the rest properly, came in a quarter note early. Let's see. We got down here to 31. And again, yeah, the tempo issue. You made your move to the coda, and you did that quite well. The piece ended well. That's all I got. I thought you did very well, and parents, you should be proud of the education that's going on here. Again, what you saw were the students teaching themselves, their director teaching them. You made music. Certainly there were some precision issues, but on the fly, I thought you did a fantastic job, and particularly all of you who are freshmen, sophomores, you've never done this before. For the juniors and seniors, let me tell you how special this was. The sight reading you just did was what Ohio selected to have been last year's sight reading. So those of you who are juniors and seniors, the opportunity that you missed last year, you just got a chance to do. I'm very proud of you, and I can't wait now to hear your next band. If you've got a group like this, I can't wait to hear that second group. Again, parents, one final round of applause for these students and their teachers.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. This concludes the concert band portion of our program today. We'd like to thank you for coming, but also to thank our adjudicators for their expert feedback today. And we hope that you enjoyed this performance, a little bit of a peek behind the curtain at the sight reading, the adjudication and clinic process. Again, thank you for attending, and we ask that you continue to wear your mask, to work together to socially distance